it pains my heart to know that there's going to be people who are going to leave this earth, never one, knowing their purpose or even trying to fulfill their dreams. And they're going to a job every day, day in and day out, that they loathe, that they don't love. For what? It is draining of your soul. It is draining of your spirit. It is draining of your mental health and your emotional health and well-being. And inevitably, it's draining on the relationships that you love unconditionally. So I would first ask people, what are you doing to fill your bucket up with joy? Every day. Not, I'll do it at night. Not, I'll do it on the weekend. Not, I'll do it when I take this 1 or 2 week vacation that I get, or this mental health day. It is daily. What are you doing to fill your bucket up with joy?
Hey, it's Breaking Barriers, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging podcast. We're here for real talk. We're not afraid to go there. And we want you to come away emboldened and energized to take action and make change.
We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger.
When I set out to help someone, it is my intention to do just that. I'm not trying to do anything other than meet somebody at their humanity.
Your world has changed, but your dreams shouldn't have to. That's why Kirkwood is your next best step. With affordable, flexible, and close-to-home options, now's a great time to start or finish your Kirkwood degree. Learn more at kirkwood.edu/findyourfuture. Displaced or discouraged at work? Kirkwood can help you learn a new skill or totally reinvent yourself for a brand new career. With so many flexible and affordable options, you can get back on track fast. Learn more at kirkwood.edu/findyourfuture.
What's happening, world? We're back again with another episode of Top Ranks Breaking Barriers, brought to you by Kirkwood Community College. I am one of your co-hosts, Anthony Arrington, joined by my co-host, Nick Ford and Joy Briscoe. What's happening, y'all? What's happening? How you guys doing? We're going to have some fun again today. This show, we get raw, we get real, we get real. We're going to talk about it. So, Nick, tell us who we got today on our show.
Certainly. So, very excited to have you here today, Future. So, Future has over 2 decades experience in education and leadership. Her career expands across several industries, including the private behavioral sector, early childhood through higher education, and small business and large corporations. She recently served as the Wisconsin State Project Coordinator to Social and Emotional Learning and Mental Health. Prior to this position, she has served as Director for Social and Emotional Learning and Community Outreach. She's been an Assistant Principal, Program Coordinator, Special Education Teacher, near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
And a Behavioral Manager and Specialist, all in the Brown Deer School District. Oh, I'm very familiar with that. Been to many swim meets there, outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's the winner of 2018 North Shore Milwaukee Rotary Rotarian of the Year, the 2018 North Shore Milwaukee Rotary's President Cup, and currently an executive board member for Rotary's World Affairs Seminar for high school students. She's a New York Times and Forbes featured social emotional leader and workplace wellness expert who works with institutions and organizations to enhance the education, health, and wellness of others. She believes change starts when people choose to sit with themselves first and where they can have an impact on the world. Welcome today, and we look forward to our conversation with you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Future. So we followed you for a while. we tend to bring folks on. We're trying to invite people to the show that we stalk.
Right?
Yeah.
We see the people we stalk on the show.
But we also attended Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging certification together. We went through that course together. And the one thing I love about you, when I met you, you're just a warm person, but you don't have a problem speaking your mind, and you don't have a problem putting people in their place when it's necessary. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes that could scare people, though.
Yes.
Like it could scare the Mike, the middle-aged white CEO of Corporation ABC, right?
Did you just name him Mike Anthony? Did you just
Mike? Yeah, it just sounded good, Mike. Lisa,
no Mike's Neil offended you.
No Mike.
Only Mike's.
Totally hypothetical.
Yeah, Mike, the CEO of some company, right? They might see you as the proverbial angry black woman, right? This person is mad. So, how do you get those Mikes of the world? No pun intended, Mike. How do you get those Mikes of the world to really understand you where you're coming from in order to listen to you?
That's a good question. And I agree. Some people, when they see or hear me, may look at me and judge and say, she's angry. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I love building relationships and I love seeking an understanding of humanity. And I keep telling people I'm an ambassador for humanity, but we can't move forward and create ripples in the hearts and minds of people unless we join together and sit down and have what we are having. And that is a conversation, building a relationship so that you can build self-awareness, so that I can build self-awareness, so that we can collectively create an environment and spaces where all people can be heard, not judged, but seen, heard, valued, and loved for what they have to say. And at the end of the day, I always sit here and, as best as I can, a non-judgmental, loving, compassionate space and curiosity. I am the seeker of curiosity. I've always been inquisitive. My mom would tell you that from an early age, even till now. And that is why I'm constantly pushing. It is a labor of love for me to even show up how I show up, to have people expand their minds, to have people expand their consciousness, to be free thinkers, to get outside of the box and do something that maybe you too are even fearful of. So it is continuing to embody myself in a loving manner, while also saying to a person who may not know me, that may judge me, I see you and I want to hear from you because you too are valued.
And just for the audience to know, Mom is here and she's nodding her head over there. So validation already. So I know you talk a lot about self-care and self-health. And I think in our space that is so important.
Yes.
Even more so for the lived experiencers in the space. Why is that so important? And how do you get through to people that they do need to take care of themselves, even in troubled times, that, you know, why it's so important?
I think there's many reasons, and the last 2.5 years have just piled on top many more reasons why. And I think people have to go to the data. The data does say something. We are living in the middle of a stress epidemic. And while the United States wants to tout we are fabulous and number one in many things, we are also number one in anxiety and depression. And those are facts. And we are also the United States and a nation and a country that doesn't use our time, even though we have it to take off. We continue to overwork and sometimes bury ourselves in work, not only figuratively, but literally. We are burying ourselves. And as a nation, many of us are not healthy right now, and not just healthy in physical being, in spiritual being, in emotional being, in our mental being. And if we are not living well, it is very difficult for us to show up and lead as well as we can. So that's why I keep saying to people, to be here, to have your breath, to have these conversations right now is a blessing. We've had millions of people who have literally lost their lives. And each one of us listening can probably say, I know one person that I personally was touched by, or a second connection that they did lose their life, whether that was to COVID or something else during the last 2.5 years. So we have to give pause and space for, there are a lot of people who are no longer here. So I question people of, can you do the best of work if you are not living your life to the fullest with being well? Because you can't project out love if you're not loving you. You can't project out wellness if you yourself aren't as well as you can be. So I stand in the space because you can't do the work unless you're living and leading well.
So how do we combat the stigmas about mental health? I mean, obviously in the Black community, there's a big stigma. Us as veterans, a very big stigma there too. You know, you don't get help. It's a sign of weakness.
Right.
How do you combat that and get to the point where we are a more healthy society and we do seek help when we need it and take care of ourselves better?
I think it is, again, relationships. Because once you have a relationship with somebody, you could understand what is relevant to them and what angle and what conversations and what topics to bridge or to lift and to celebrate. And you bring up a good point about the military. When COVID was going on, the first week, it was March 13th, I remember, the school shut down. We were doing restorative practices, professional development for school-wide, district-wide. And the following week, we came back as a leadership team. And I said, you mark my words, we are going to have a mental health crisis on our hands. 2.5 years later, even a year later, what I said came true, unfortunately. And it was at that time that I started, because I also build community in the school districts. So I started talking to the police officers to see what were they seeing at the time. And they validated that they were seeing more calls for mental health crisis, and it continues to be so. And they fit into that stigma as well, too, of you, even if you see something, don't say something, and you numb your way through, because you can't get help or you can't let people know that you need help. So I think it's us who have experienced and gone through mental health issues and diagnosis speaking up to say, this is what I lived through. And because I was vulnerable and stood in my authenticity, saying that I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I suffered through, and it was an awful time in my life. And I'm here to tell you and to help support you how I was able to get through that. And the more you can normalize and speak to, this is what people are living with and living through, and you too may be doing that, you feel more vulnerable to say, I'm struggling too, and I don't know exactly how I can get help, but I can get help, and I am going to do this not only for myself, but for the people that I impact and have relationships with every day. So I think it's getting to know people who have suffered or know people who have lived through it, building those relationships, and then saying, I'm going to dedicate myself to pouring into me, building skills, having a knapsack of tools, because at any given point in our lives, we're each going to come to a point where we're going to have to get over a gap and jump over the gap of not being so well. And it's at those moments of time that we could be building ourselves up so we have the tools when it actually comes to a really bad point in time, that then we have nothing and we're floundering to say, I don't even have tools because I've never even practiced this. Why not practice the tools now and put them in place?
I want to piggyback on that because Nick said something that triggered me.
My favorite.
Not in a good way, because it's right? We're in this space, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. This is what we do for a living. However, when I look at your resume, I look at your background, I look at your work, like I went to your website and I've known you for a while. I don't even see the word diversity. I don't see you talking about that, but I know that's where I met you. And I know that part of that is because, and we can experience the traumatization, the traumatizing of certain underrepresented populations that was exacerbated during the COVID. And it was doubly exacerbated because of George Floyd at the same time. So talk about how your work, your profession aligns with diversity, equity, and inclusion, because many people would look at you and say, well, she's not a diversity person. She's just a social emotional person.
Exactly. So important.
Align those up for us.
Okay. So a lot of people don't know the background of who I am or how I got into any of this work.
Let's hear it.
Okay. And I think I will spread back to my mom, because everybody's like, oh, you just got in this future, or you're new to this. And okay, that is maybe your perception, but perception isn't always reality. And I have speaking my truth and being authentic because that's what my mom did 40 years ago, of speaking her truth and saying, I'm going to go against the grain and marry somebody and love somebody based on the character instead of their color. Now, that pushback in the 70s left her losing a lot. And that's why I say, if you're in the game or life of equity, be prepared to lose something while also gaining something. Because you might lose some wellness on some days. You might lose some friends. You might lose some contracts and some profitability with certain groups, while also gaining a sense of wellness. I could sleep better at night. I have a different support system. So there's losses and there gains, and there's a beautiful harmony, or maybe people would call it balance. So the drive that I have came from her seeing injustices and speaking up about it. Then I catapulted into diversity and inclusion when I went back to work after college with students who had other abilities. And I saw in the classrooms how they were being treated. And these students weren't students of the global majority. They were white students. And I was angered and I was frustrated and I was saddened by how the students who had other abilities were being treated in the classrooms. And they were getting minimal hands-on, minimal skills, and being othered. And the classrooms weren't creating the classrooms of belonging. So I said, well, I'm going to speak up and say something. And I did. And they said, well, you have to go back for a master's. I had already done 2 bachelor degrees, 2 theses. So I said, okay, I'll go back for my master's. And I went back for my master's in special ed because I said, I need to create the classrooms because this is injustice right in front of me. The kids aren't in a space of belonging. The kids aren't in a space that they are being seen and heard. So I went back And that's where I started to see more diversity. But when we talk about diversity, I also look at it not just through the lens of race.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about diversity, you have to talk about diversity of mind, diversity of gender, diversity of religion, diversity of cultures. And our school systems, if you look at it, they're not very diverse in regards to that. Even if you look at the calendar on the days that the students are off, religious-wise, oftentimes it's not centering all religions.
Right.
So if we want to talk about diversity, if we want to talk about equity, if we want to talk about inclusion, then we too must have to free and expand our minds and say, how do we define diversity? Because oftentimes we will get into these debates and then two people won't sit down and say, here's my definition of diversity. Here's my definition of diversity. Now let's have a conversation. Diversity comes in many different shapes and sizes, and we all have something to bring to the table of our different experiences, but it's many different things. Socioeconomic status diversity. I could go through the list of the things that we tried to bring to the table with all the students that I've worked with over the decade in regards to diversity, and then creating those environments where they feel belong and creating equity for those spaces. So I am entrenched in diversity, and I'm more entrenched in equity and belonging because people continuously leave their jobs, leave their communities, leave their homes, leave their families if they don't feel included or that they don't belong.
Right. And to me, maybe I'm missing it because that's where it ties the social and emotional trauma in the back and the self-care
Correct.
To these inequities because
Correct.
it exacerbates them. And I see that, I have this saying I call brush your teeth moments. And you kind of said with the self-aware, you can't really lie to yourself.
No.
And when you're alone, the truth is going to look you dead in your face every day. And I don't care what side of the coin you're on, whether you believe that there's inequalities or you believe that there's not inequalities. Reality's in your face and it won't lie to you. So
Right.
I always knew that about you. I mean, I met you. I look at you as a diversity and inclusion champion. I don't even think of you as social and emotional expert, but that's what you do for a living.
And that's
kind of
where
cool.
it's so funny because so when I read your bio and stuff, some of why I was excited is because I know, like from the DIB lens, that's been around for a while now. And people have dived in after 2020.
Right.
But merging DIB or that intersection of wellness and DIB is kind of a new and emerging thing. And so I was so excited to talk to you because your passion is in educational institutions, as a lot of my work has been there too. And so having those conversations, what do you say to people that, that school districts are doing so much more with so much less, right? And so we've got gaps in achievement, we've got lower socioeconomic, we've got all of these things. What do you say to those people that say, we don't have the time or the effort, or we can't right now focus on social emotional learning? What do you say to those individuals out there? Or we can't prioritize it? Because I know it's very important because of all the things that we talked about. But each of us, while we have these roles, are because everybody else maybe isn't on board for that.
Right.
So what do you say to those individuals
I love
out
that
there?
question, Joey, because that's a better version of what I was going to say is, what the heck is wrong with our education system?
That's how I might have said it, man. Jordan beat around the bush. I might have said it like that. What the heck's going on?
What is going on? So what do we, because I think that is a big issue with our educational system currently, is that we don't put enough effort and energy into creating spaces of belonging and also using social emotional learning to do some of that. And so what do you say to those people out there maybe listening right now that are like, okay, I get that, but when we have to teach, how can we focus on this when we have to teach? Now, I kind of know a little bit, but I want you to share in your words, what would you say to those individuals?
I think I put my coaching hat on.
Yes.
And I put my coaching hat on because the last 2.5 years have given us opportunities. Instead of looking at all of these things as if they're challenges, they are opportunities that are sitting right before your own eyes that you could choose to take action on or not. So what are you going to do with the opportunity that you have been given is the first thing. The second question that I would ask people to reflect on is, in your classroom, in your halls, in your activities, in your after school, in your community, the children are learning social emotional skills. What social emotional skills are they learning that you're personally modeling and not even speaking? And would you be proud if your child was sitting in that classroom, if your grandchild was sitting in that classroom, If you don't have children, but you're paying taxes in your community, if you have a home, would you be happy that that is what the children are learning, those skills? Because these children, these young adults, are going to grow up and be in the organizations that we all work in now. So would you like them to transfer their skills and embody those skills in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? Because we are teaching them without saying something.
Mm-hmm.
So why not take time to infuse it into every class, into every activity, to build skills that I think every single one of us in here would say, we didn't get taught this directly in school, and we had to just figure it out. And that's why we have adults sitting here today. I could pull up headline after headline that aren't well at emotionally regulating, don't do well at being self-aware, aren't building positive relationships, responsible decision-making is lacking, and the social awareness for all of humanity, all of their community, all of their state, all of their nation can be improved upon. Why? Because they didn't build upon, harness, and keep practicing those skills so that those skills can be better. Why would you not give that beautiful gift to the kids right now?
Let's go there, like we say on this show, because I think that's great. I know institutions right now that we have experience with that have a real challenge with the LGBTQ community. Significant challenges. And I'm thinking about what you said, because ultimately the culture has to make those decisions, but the culture is made up of the people and a lot of leaders, teachers, administrators. How do we get, I think what I hear you saying is that many of those leaders themselves don't have the social emotional intelligence to navigate through this. So it's easy for them to turn their back or to stand down against a silent minority who is not advocating for those underrepresented people.
Correct.
How can we help those leaders get over that hump and continue to take those arrows, those challenges, the resistance that they get, because it's their job to continue to infuse that into the institution. It's part of their job. It's not their entire job. But how do you help those leaders come through that challenge?
Okay, that's a great question. I think it's a twofold. We too need help. And a great leader knows that they will need help, and that they need help from people, and that you don't know what you don't know. And we shouldn't penalize people for not knowing. We should penalize people for not knowing and not doing something to better themselves. So one, it is okay to say, I don't know and I need help in regards to this. I remember many years ago, we had a student that was transitioning. They were transitioning from a woman to a male. And that was a big to-do in our community of, oh my gosh, you're going to let them go into this bathroom, and what about this? And all these questions unraveled of, well, I believe this. And at the end of the day, let's talk to the child.
Yes.
Because we forget oftentimes you may not be ready for this as a leader, but if the community, if the voices around are saying we are ready for this, so you need to come along, use those voices that are saying, can we help you? Use those voices around that are saying, we're curious, or what are you going to do? Student voice is very impactful, and we used it often. Get the voices of what the students have to say. It doesn't mean that you have to do exactly what they're saying, but to be self-aware, to hear what they have to say of areas you're lacking in, areas you can improve on, celebrations, those glows and grows of human being of what the school district is doing or the leader is doing is very important. So I think it's one, getting and hearing all the voices and being open to do that, and open to sitting with it, because those voices mean something. And sometimes there's tough critics out there, but it doesn't mean that that isn't important to hear too. While also saying as a leader, this is what is coming to me. How can I build my skills? Isn't that what we're in leadership for? Every day you want to be a better leader.
Right. Yes.
I don't know what I don't know, but I have a ton of resources. And oftentimes there's some money you could figure out to even get that knowledge, get the skills so that you too can grow. So I think it's a twofold of, we can help you, while also let's talk through. Sometimes you're going to have to be coached. Sometimes you're going to have to seek consulting, and it's okay, but are you listening to what the voices have to say or not?
Right. And are you listening to your voice? Because I think a lot of times we've seen, and Nikki, we've had this conversation where leaders talk, but when the rubber hits the road, you're not socially and emotionally aware. Maybe that's the thing. And it's easy for you to back off and quit. We're dealing with one right now where it's really easy. It would be really easy for this individual to back off and quit, but we're coaching them through how to not do this. And you have to, it's almost like working out. You know, the pain's coming, right? But if you're willing to be stronger, are you willing to go through the pain? You do it when you do push-ups every day. You say, I'm going to do 11 today. Tomorrow I'm going to get to 15. That's what we're, I'm old, man.
I was thinking 3.
I'm old. Oh, shoot. Make me feel good. Yeah.
The glows and the grows. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure you've seen it. There's because you're on social media too and LinkedIn and all that. There was a post the other day I want to talk about because I'm curious also, like, I haven't even talked about Joy and Anthony about this yet. And it comes up a lot with our discussions, is it's hard. There was 2 points of view. One was one way, one was the other, about being an activist and being in the DEIB space. And that there's one train of thought saying you can't do both. And there's others that say you can. And it was kind of interesting watching the back and forth. We do talk about these sometimes, these things we see on social media. What are your thoughts on that?
I just want to ask, who's the judge? Like, who's the final person that
says, right?
Go with God now? Now it's yay or nay. Like, it's so funny that people think that's some of the issue. People think we have the power to regulate that.
Okay,
that's a good one. There.
That is a good one, right?
Right.
I think this is my answer for a lot of things. We want to do either ors a lot of times.
Yes.
Either this is right and that's wrong, or that's right and this is wrong. And I have people reflecting on, why can't it be a both and?
Yes.
I truly believe there are some people who are DEIB and activists. And why can't they? Because society tries to put us in these boxes. Pick a lane. Yes. Why should I have to pick a lane if I am strong and if I have the knowledge base and if I could have an impact in both things or 3 things or 4 things? I shouldn't have to pick a lane. So therefore, my answer to you would be, I think it depends. What are all the variables? Who's the person? What's the impact? Right. Because outcomes matter. Impact matters. So what do the people say about the people that they are trying to judge?
Well, it's funny, and I'm glad you asked that.
We talk about this a lot, right?
We talk about it a lot.
And I think we made a decision early on that, because Anthony, you're very much probably considered an activist as well, that if that becomes an issue with our business, that's okay.
We have to ask that. And we've talked about that. I think
there is a line there where, like, okay, well, yes, you might lose some business, but we're okay with losing some business anyway, depending on the fit. So to us, it's almost like an extra filter.
Yeah. I always wonder, like I said, even just the discussion for me, myself, it's very, it's interesting because sometimes I feel like it's an attempt to get people in a box, right? And people don't understand that in itself. My daughter and I were sharing, that's why I picked up my phone. We shared on, you've probably seen it, where there's this these roles that you play in transforming a racial equity in an ecosystem, right? And so my daughter was telling me, she sent it to me, and at the same time I happened to be researching it on something else. So it was so funny because I'm like, okay, let's have this conversation. And she was telling me her friend saw her in this role, but she kind of saw herself in another role. And I was like, well, it's probably both, right? Like when I look through the roles that I probably have played as a company, as a founder, as a small business, it changes. It's not always the same. Yes. And I think that there are certain times and certain situations you are called on to be different. And you don't want other people's limiting beliefs to say, well, no, I don't know you over there. I don't know you as a small business owner. So you're a Black woman, so you can't be a managing partner with Top Rank because there isn't any of them. Or you have to say at the school district, how dare you think about being an entrepreneur? How much would the world miss if we didn't have that gift in the future coming out and doing her own thing?
Or I didn't see you. I saw you marching last week in the streets. You can't be in the corporate office today.
Exactly.
How you in the suit today? You was marching last week.
I'm wearing my combat boots. In the suit.
That's a great point.
Exactly.
I always used to say this to Nick. I don't know what I am. I think I'm an activist today, Nick.
I love it.
Because activist, by definition, right, is to disrupt, right, to agitate the system.
Right.
But you're perceived as pariah or something negative. And I do think you can do them both.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Maybe the system needs to be disrupted.
Yeah.
Right. I think it can be both.
Yeah.
And I think it's what you said too. There's times that maybe I don't have to put that role on. There might be another activist in the room and one is fine. We might need me to speak up in a moment of time where maybe you need 2 or 3 activists. Okay.
Right.
Exactly.
What's the situation? There's so many different variables that go into this at any given moment in time. I can't sit here and say this is what it is without knowing all the other little tiny variables that have a big impact on what it would be or the decision I would make that it is. And I am one for saying, I'm not going to sit here in a box because people told me that forever. Well, you're DEIB future or just do social emotional leadership.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, why would I do that when I have experience at the state level and for many years with mental health? So I can't do that too. And I've been focusing on equity for decades. So I'm not supposed to do that either. I'm supposed to pick just one. I don't think we should do that to people because we have beautiful gifts and talents, especially as business owners. Think about it.
Right.
I am my PR. I am my marketing. I am my content creator.
Exactly.
I'm allowed to wear all those roles if I'm an entrepreneur. But how dare you do it if you're DEIB and an activist at the same time?
Right.
Well, because historically, activists are anti corporation, right? They're anti. It's always perceived as an anti, right? It's the words matter. So the word
They do
activist has this connotation that it can't be a positive thing. That we're all activist has to be breaking a window or running into a courtroom and shouting. Maybe that's the case on some days. That might be necessary.
Yep, that is true.
Well, stop. There's nothing necessary about breaking windows. Let me just get that out there.
But the act of disruption.
But the act of disruption matters, right? I always have these conversations with people who say about the kid who breaks the window. Well, let's get to we love root cause. Let's get to the root. Why did he break the window? A third grader knows it's wrong to break the window.
Right.
See, I'm gonna coin a new term. I'm tired of activist word anyway. Positive disruptor.
Yes. Yeah, good trouble. Right?
Well, Nick's on a roll today.
Good trouble, right?
Someone hashtag that quick. Someone copyright that.
Yes,
Positive disruptor. Because
positive disruptor.
I mean, it's just again because you get words like that where it's like Maurice's over there looking it up to see what's already out there. You know, you hear these terms and you hear activists and people have a negative connotation.
Right.
Yeah.
Why?
And I'm like, we have the power, like right now, we can even redefine the things that people have negative connotation with. Like I have been waiting for someone to come up to me and say something about, oh gosh, what's the phrase that everybody hates that they never taught in elementary school, but it was used. Oh gosh, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Is this one of the ones in their book we just read too?
Yes.
Oh,
what is the phrase? It's super popular.
What doesn't kill
right
you
now,
makes you stronger.
Where they're like, oh well, no, you can't teach that to kids because with 1619 Freedom School is or 1619, and I'm like, we never taught that to school. Like I'm tired of letting other
Critical
people,
race theory?
critical race theory. Yes, critical CRT. It's so and it's
or
like,
I like to call it real history.
right, exactly. And so I'm in this state of time where I'm like, let's just redefine it. Like it not redefine it, but we don't have to let we have as much of a voice as the people that sometimes seem to be louder with their ignorance, right? And so critical race theory was never taught in K-12 education. Never. Not even to say that some elements of it shouldn't have been, right? Let's have that discussion. But it never was. So no, I'm not going to have this conversation with you when I'm trying to talk about Black history in a classroom and you've somehow equated it to CRT. Right away, it means that we aren't on the same level.
Yep.
So
It made me think of something, and I think you'd be a good person to answer this.
Okay.
So I had a white woman call me a couple weeks ago. And actually, she called me a couple months ago. We went and had lunch, and she wanted to talk about her role as a career coach, and she's trying to help folks at an institution. And most of the athletes at this institution are Black, football and basketball. So as a white woman, she's struggling trying to reach them and trying to figure out ways to help them understand there's life after sports. Everybody's not going to the NFL or the NBA. A lot. And she called me because she felt like she doesn't want to feel like a white savior. She doesn't want to feel like she's coming in trying to, save people. We met, gave her connected her to some folks in the organization. She called me a couple weeks later and wants to have lunch again. She goes, I've been reading book, I've been researching. She goes, and I'm just really nervous. I feel like I can't use my voice the way I want because I'm going to be perceived as this white savior again. And what I'm thinking, my question to you is, how do we help white people, particularly white women in these positions, who feel like they do want to be an activist, but they're scared to talk because of the perception that they're a white savior? How do they navigate that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. And what I'm chuckling in my mind, but I'm going to chuckle out right now is I actually co-facilitate with a white woman and we do interracial sisterhood.
Oh, love.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we do it because there are many white women that you're finding that are saying, hey, I would like to be an ally or a co-conspirator, or I want to help.
Right.
And at the same time, I don't know how, or I feel I'm going to be judged, or I don't feel I should be in this space. So I think where you need to start is that, saying, where are you at on this journey? Getting really in tuned with yourself in silence to say, this is where I'm sitting right now. And acknowledging your own awareness of, I don't know this, or I do need to know this. What am I willing to lose? What am I willing to gain? How much am I willing to push through the uncomfortable emotions that you inevitably face on this journey? How long could you withstand those uncomfortable emotions? How long could you withstand maybe some relationships being severed? Relationships being, it is real talk, relationships being increased and a new body and beings coming in, not only for yourself, because it's a transformation and evolution of self, but also for the other people. So I think it's sitting with yourself first before you go do anything. You have to get an understanding of you first. And then I would say, now what do I want to do? Do I feel like I need to go into this space? Because my voice is important too. And there's not enough of us. As many people want to say, oh, there's so many people in DEIB. Is there really?
No.
Okay. There's not enough of us, because if we could do all the work, then the work would have been done already.
Right.
We
Yes.
wouldn't still be doing it.
Fits right with our vision.
Exactly.
And we don't want to do this anymore.
Well, and it's one of the reasons we talked about the type of folks we wanted to have on on our podcast is other practitioners, because there ain't enough of us, so we don't know it all.
There isn't. And we have to get out of the scarcity mindset.
Yes.
There's an abundance, and we can all do this if we wanted to. And we actually should be doing it. Equity is the
Actually
lift
should.
of all. So it's not you over there are doing it. No, we all should be doing it.
Yeah.
So I think it's the people, and I tell my co-facilitator this, she's going to be able to get into doors that I would never be able to even dream of. And that's real talk. As much as I would like to change that before I leave this earth and take my final breath, I don't know if that's going to happen. We've been doing it for 40-something years, my mom and I, literally. So I still sit here and I think even when my daughter is 40, I will probably still be saying the same thing of it could be better. So I look at what doors could you get in, knock on the front door, not the back door, not the window, and actually have the door open for you for those spaces and those faces to actually hear you, to sit with the information that you're giving, and for them to choose to be aware, acknowledge, apologize, and take action. It's the 4 A's. So you might get people to do those 4 A's that I can't. And then I say, well, why not? Then go into the door and have those conversations with the people, whether you're getting paid for it or not getting paid for it. Because that's another debate of, well, white people shouldn't be getting paid for this work either.
Right.
They don't want to pay anyone for their work.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Don't pay anybody for this work.
It's like,
But no, that and I'm glad you mentioned that, because you know, we've had this very frank conversation here. Top Rank, we are deliberately, we got a white man, a black man, and a black woman. We all got disabilities. We got military veterans. We walk our walk. But it could be challenging if you're not ready for that.
Correct.
It could be challenging for a Nick to have to take arrows from family members, and we have this talk about, you know, Jimmy's not going to want to invite you to Thanksgiving anymore, things like that. Like those are, and so I feel like I have social emotional learning, because these are the things that I was telling this white woman. I said, you have to sit with yourself. I said, if you believe in this work, I'm telling you right now, the arrows are coming.
Yeah.
You're going to get chastised. Somebody's not going to invite you somewhere. You might lose a friend. I can't answer that question for you.
Probably from both sides,
Like me,
too.
just don't give a shit.
Because and even communities of color aren't even always like, you might want to do the work, but the fact, and you might be doing the work internally, you might be educating yourself, you might be training, but still, because of trauma that communities of color have experienced, until you build a relationship with people that you don't know, you know, it's not always going to be open arms come on in,
Yeah.
and they may view you like that. So it's not even just on one aspect of now I can't go, with my dad's golf buddies, but also the people that I really want to help and I really want to impact in these things, but I have to take the time and energy into building those relationships with people as well. And so can be rewarding, right? And should be rewarding, but it's going to definitely take work, and you have to be aware of that.
Well, I think as the white man in the group, I mean, I recognize too, like there's certain events that, like we've talked about this before, is like if it's Black History Month, I'm not going to be a speaker at it. I'll tell you who should be a speaker at, but I'm not going to speak at it. I may be in a panel with a bunch of other folks, maybe give my point of view on it. But I think that's where a lot of people have that distaste, is there are folks that look like me that will do it. And
maybe should do it.
Well, yeah, maybe.
It's a debatable.
I just have a heartache with that. It's personally, I have a heartache that, I don't feel
along, right?
I feel like I can talk at it. Yes. But I would bring someone along that should talk at it.
Right.
Just like when we facilitate, I may be in the room, but I'm not the only person in the room. So,
right.
And I think that's key. And that's why I really appreciate you talking about that. Cause, you're right. There's so many different views on that. And
well, you're my white savior, Nick.
Can't even save myself. I don't know how to save anyone else. So.
No, great point.
That
point.
Is a great point. That is a great point.
Well, no, we got audience questions. We got questions, but we do have questions. We do try to take an audience question or two. So today we decided to take an audience question from our Dr. Dre producer, Maurice Davis from Cedar Rapids.
Today's question comes from our producer, Maurice from Cedar Rapids. How do you get organizations who say they are socially and emotionally aware to recognize that they have a diversity issue?
I think it comes with reflective questions. If you show me your data, I'm going to show you your bias. Let me repeat that again.
Come on.
If you show me your data, I will show you your bias. And I think well-intentioned people can have an impact and cause harm too. Good people could cause harm. Good people could be racist. And sometimes you didn't even look at the data, or you would never look at the data with a lens of the way culture facilitators would, with the lens of people who have been doing the equity work for years would look at it. So you may never even find it in your data and say, oh, we never even noticed that our board was all white. We never even noticed it was all male. Right. So I think it comes to, let's sit down and have a look at your data. What do you see in your data? What do you not see in your data? What are your celebrations? Because I don't believe in beating people up either. I think it's a bad practice. And I think that is what gets people to say, I'm not going to go on this journey when we need everybody going on this journey. So what can we celebrate about what they are doing? You could pick glimmers of hope and light and beauty out of anything. So celebrate it while also acknowledging these are our grows. What areas do you need to grow, and not giving it to them, have them see it for themselves and guiding them along of, oh, I didn't even realize. Okay, so we had the aha light bulb moment happen. Now what do we do? Because what do you want to do with the information that you have? To have the information is one thing. There's lots of people that have had the information and the data for centuries, for decades, for years. And you're just sitting on that information. That doesn't take action. That's not going to improve. It's just going to be exactly as it is, upholding the status quo, which is not serving many of us. So I think it's taking that data and saying, what do we want to take action on now? You can't do it all. You can eventually, but what is the one piece that you're going to start on right now to make the improvements? And here's the other thing I would warn people, because I've talked to numerous people on this. Well, we need more diversity here. Okay. And let's take a pause. Because if you didn't cultivate the soil for diverse people to be there, you will get diverse people in. The diverse people will not stay.
Right.
So retention will be awful, and you're going to be filtering and saying, see, we don't have any diversity. No, it's because you didn't sit in your own self-awareness and acknowledge who you are, how you're showing up, and how you could be better to have the diverse people stay there. What belonging spaces are you creating?
Right. What are you creating? And to that point is when people become overly data driven,
Mm-hmm.
they look at that data, and when the data next year shows that they didn't hit some number, they're not looking at the social emotional part of that puzzle.
Right.
They're looking at, oh my God, we got to go recruit again. We didn't invest enough money over here.
Yep.
But maybe your problem was you have a social emotional issues
Right.
in your
And
backyard.
not only do those people leave, with social media nowadays, that word gets around.
Mhm.
Now it's even harder for
Yeah.
you to try
Correct.
to have a diverse hiring strategy, which drives me nuts anyway. But I mean, it's just like a self-perpetuating, you
It
know,
is. We say
prophecy.
belonging first, like
Belonging
literally belonging first.
I agree.
If you cultivate a space that people feel valued at work, they feel like they can be their authentic selves at work, they will go and they will be your marketing.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
will go say, you want to work here, right? Like the places that we've heard about that are awesome to work at, we all heard about it. And typically it wasn't necessarily a commercial on TV or social media.
Word of mouth.
It was word of mouth. It was
Yeah.
my friend said, I heard this. Someone made a Facebook post. It was something like that.
Yeah.
Very organic marketing. And so from a marketing standpoint, start there first. Like start by investing in your culture. You have to have a retention plan. I so agree with you on that. Like retention has to be a part of your recruitment strategy first, right?
Right. The
Yeah.
other thing I think of too with people is you are sitting in, we want to do all this stuff and not pausing. It's a treadmill of action items, not understanding what is going to be the impact. What do we hope to be the impact? Did we take a pause and reflect instead of go, 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 go? Because sometimes you could go faster by going slower and acknowledging what is happening or what's not happening is
Right.
going the way that you want it to be. So I think with the retention, people need to ask themselves, have I ever been the only one? And I'm going to ask that question very candidly for people to sit and reflect on. Have you ever been the only one? And I want all of you to recall that,
And what is that like? Yeah.
right? Have you ever been the only male, the only white male, the only woman, the only veteran, right? How long of a time did you have to sit in that space and through that moment of time? And a lot of the people who are looking for diverse candidates, whether that's racially diverse, religious diversity, mindset diversity, whatever you want to call it, they have never really for a long period of time had to sit as the only one. So they have no idea what it takes for a human being to have to go into that place of work 7-8 hours a day, 5 days a week, all year round,
And deal with that.
and deal with it.
Yeah. Great question, Maurice, Dr. Dre Davis.
Thank you, Dr.
We appreciate
Dre.
you. Great question. Great question. Well, look, we as we say with all our guests, we've got to have a part 2 or something going on here because we could talk all day. But I want to make sure that is there anything related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging or social emotional intelligence that you want our listeners to know that we haven't talked about today that would be a good nugget for them to take away?
Nugget alert.
Nugget alert. Hey, I like that. Hey, note that down, Maurice.
We need a
I
sound
like a
bite.
roll today. Producing, you're gonna smack me later, but you know.
You're on a roll today, man.
Yeah, I like that.
Nugget
I like
alert.
that.
But anything that you want our readers to take away that we haven't talked about, our listeners.
I think several things. The first thing is, what is bringing you joy? Because it pains my heart to know that there's going to be people who are going to leave this earth, never one, knowing their purpose or even trying to fulfill their dreams. And they're going to a job every day, day in and day out, that they loathe, that they don't love. For what? It is draining of your soul. It is draining of your spirit. It is draining of your mental health and your emotional health and well-being. And inevitably, it's draining on the relationships that you love unconditionally. So I would first ask people, what are you doing to fill your bucket up with joy? Every day. Not, I'll do it at night. Not, I'll do it on the weekend. Not, I'll do it when I take this 1 or 2 week vacation that I get or this mental health day. It is daily. What are you doing to fill your bucket up with joy? What are you doing? Would be my question. And I would ask all of you, can I ask you to share out? What are you doing? One sentence. what are you doing in this moment of time, this week, this month, this year, to fill your bucket up with joy?
Absolutely. Well, I can answer right now. Making beats. Tonight I'll be in the studio.
All right.
Absolutely. It's my joy.
Okay.
Oh, I have so many of them. I mean, I just love life. Spend time with family. After being in the military for 21 years, there are a lot of times I wasn't with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have to think it drives my wife nuts that now I want to be with her all the time. But I think sometimes she'd be like, isn't it time for you to go to sea? But yeah, spending time with family and appreciating every moment I have. Because I mean, I have friends that are younger even than me that have lost family members already. And it's like that time just isn't always there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For me.
And I spend time with Joy to get my joy in life. So.
I would joy it. For me, family and purpose, I think that I probably came into this work and this line a very windy, twisty way. But now that I'm here, it's purpose, right? And when you get into a place where you're doing your purpose-driven work, you almost have to sometimes push back from the table because there's something that drives you to keep on going. So like right now, to fill my bucket, I've realized that this work, for me, it does fill my bucket because I feel like God has me on earth, or whoever your higher power is. For me is God. I feel like I'm here to do some of this and to leave some type of impact in this work and to give it my all to make the world better for my kids and the next generation and to pour into people. So for me, it's a mixture of like my family. I have a 13-year-old. That's the youngest, and the last one's still at home. And so she is a mixture of joy most days, teenager the other days. Exactly. Yeah. So her as well. But then also, I mean, just having conversations like these.
It's always a joy, just in different ways sometimes.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. The other thing I would tell people
hold on, what's yours?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We need your bucket.
Yeah. Nature. Getting outside and just breathing the fresh air.
Yeah.
In nature, seeing nature, going for a walk, being with the trees. Nature is a big bucket of joy filler for me. And it doesn't matter if it's 20 degrees or 92 degrees. Oh. So I have to get outside.
I'm struggling right now because
I'm a fair weather nature person.
I work outside a lot, and it's going to be a tough winter. Someone asked me, or I was telling somebody, architects, they get paid all these millions of dollars to create buildings with light. And I said, I just sit outside and God gives me my light and I'm good.
Right.
I didn't pay for it.
My last thing is don't forget to be present, because I think there's so many people that they're walking around with their minds full and not being mindful. I'm going to say that again. There's so many people that are walking around with their minds full, but they're not mindful. And deep. What I've learned on this journey, and that's why I want to pass these nuggets forward, is there's so many people that are standing and present in being, but not present in mind when they're with people, because they're thinking about all the past regrets or all the past harms or all the past things that they missed out on. Or they're so focused on the future. I need to plan ahead. I need to do this. And while you're focusing on the past, you're focusing on the future. You're missing this beautiful moment, which is the present moment right here.
That.
I got to remind myself of that and take the electronic toy away when,
Exactly.
I think we all got to be better at that. So
that's my two
thank
nuggets.
You. Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you again. I was getting to, we appreciate your time, and we hope we can do this again and keep changing the world. Keep being vocal online, and we're going to keep following you. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Everyone else, get online and follow Future Cain.
Yes, follow Future Cain.
Future, what do you have coming up?
Whew, what don't I have coming up?
All right.
I'll be traveling several different places in the upcoming year, just helping people with their work. So I think those are upcoming things, but obviously I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. I just got on Twitter recently. I don't know how I'm feeling about that yet.
I'm done. I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. Just letting you know.
Someone was told to play.
I don't believe in cancel culture, but I'm done.
Right. So you could follow me anywhere, but I'm pretty personable. I'm private, but personable is what I like to tell people. So if you have a question, feel free to ask. I try to respond to everybody because we're in this together.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Future. We really appreciate you for being a guest on Breaking Barriers. I want a sound for that too. I'm going to go, wah, wah.
Yes.
Every time we say Breaking Barriers.
Take note of that, Maurice.
So, Maurice.
We're going to take a shot every time we say Breaking Barriers. I'm going to get a drinking game.
All right.
Big shout out to our 5-star presenting sponsor, Kirkwood Community College. We appreciate your partnership on this podcast. Also want to give thanks to our friends at Breaking Barriers, Tyler, Lincoln, Barnes, DDS, and Community Savings Bank.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up and send your questions, comments, suggestions to info@topranktalentsolutions.com.
Thank you. Special thanks to our listeners out there. We couldn't leverage the work we're doing, and we hope that you find this on your favorite podcast platform. We'll also be on YouTube as well, and make sure that you share this love and you share this passion about the work that we're doing and the great knowledge and minds that we're bringing onto the show. So we appreciate that.
Our next episode, we haven't had the official next date yet, but look for these to drop. We're looking at dropping every
First and third week
of the month,
starting in January. So we'll have a third one in December, and then, or our second one in December, and then we'll hopefully every other 2 weeks then.
So
and
keep an eye on us.
Again, my producer's over there looking at me like, oh man.
Yeah,
They're
we got
putting
you
stuff in
busy. We
there.
got the good stuff. Good stuff.
Couldn't do it without our producer. So
we could not
does
do
a
it
great
without our
job.
producer.
Thank you. All right.
We hope you take whatever you heard with you on your journey to change hearts and minds when it comes to DEI and B. That is the hard work, and we want you with us.
Until next time, right?
Until next time.
It's all break some barriers.
Break some barriers. Thank you.
Advancing equity is not a one-year project. It's a generational commitment.
There are too few people in the world willing to be the domino, too few people willing to take that fall.